Okay, first off, once again, thank you for helping me with this interview for my project. And I guess the first question I really want to ask all of you is just an introduction of who you are, how long you've been in Bristol, and so on. So, who would like to start first?
I'll go first. I'm Chris, and I've been in Bristol since, don't know, 1990, something like that, around then. Yeah, I can't quite remember, but yeah.
Okay, Judge, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, so I'm Jigg Singh. I play bass in the Bhangra band RSVP, and I am born and raised in Bristol. So and my family has been in Bristol since the 50s. So I'm very, very much based in Bristol.
A fully fledged Bristolian, then.
Properly. Stephen, what about you?
Yeah, likewise, born and bred in Bristol. I'm lead percussionist for RSVP, and yeah, been in Bristol since the 70s.
Since the 70s.
My name's Dildar, and I'm also Bristolian, more or less Bristol born and bred. And founding member of the band. We're just a mad group of talented, mega crazy buggers who actually love music, all of us.
That's a very nice description. Talented, yeah. And well, I don't know the full description of the crazy part, but that's what I'm here for this interview. But yeah, looking forward to that part.
Crazy part being the actual characters and the music and the fusion kind of stuff we do. I suppose that's what it is. It's like there's no boundaries. You know, the talents. There's no boundaries to the talents. There's no boundaries to the characters. It's just good laugh.
Looking forward to that. But yeah, okay, so this is another simple question, but if you guys could explain your relationship with music, for example, you can talk about the band RSVP, what kind of music you make, and yeah.
Okay, yeah, talk about music. I play lots of different instruments, mostly plucked string instruments, and also some bowed strings as well. I'm a sort of violinist. As well as all the sort of predictable guitar and mandolin and bouzouki and all that kind of fretted family of things. And I guess I've played so many different styles of music over the years, from English traditional folk stuff to current to punk bands. East European bands, so I've played with lots of Roma players, so played in that kind of bands, klezmer bands, so that's a Jewish band, Bhangra obviously, and yeah, Irish stuff, lots of sort of folk music from Britain and Europe and across the world really, but yeah.
Well, that's a lot of variety. Yeah.
It's a sort of fusion of stuff. I'm a fusion of stuff, and so's that. So
Okay, well, yeah, I played percussion mainly. I started off playing an Indian folk drum called the dholak, which quite popular in India and different regions, and then moved on to different other Indian hand percussion instruments like tabla and dhol, and then general other worldwide percussion like congos and cajons and drums and most drums really is what I mainly specialise in, and then I play a little bit of keyboards and harmonium for melody parts. And but yeah, like Chris, played my instrument with various genres of styles. So most folk music, it can be mixed and matched and work together and whatnot. It's rhythms and music, and then yeah. Various different styles, and then other recording projects that have led to not different styles being made, but just different putting my instruments with other recording projects. So yeah, it's been great.
Ooh, so yeah, it's quite similar to Chris with Chris doing a lot of like stringed instruments, but also in different styles. You also do like percussion. That's really cool. You guys have got a pretty cool band. You have a lot of like skills, and I'm just only gone through two of you. Wow. I'm looking forward to what you do, Dildar and Judge. Yeah. Okay. Who would you like to go next, Dildar?
Yeah. I suppose kind of grew up with the Bollywood stuff, really, in all fairness. And Bhangra comes second, and then now fusiony stuff. And the influence of our environment, a lot of reggae, dub kind of stuff as well, English singing as well. We just love fusion stuff as well, you know. So the band in itself has actually evolved more and more. Like I say, there's no boundaries to what we'll try to, well, synergize or actually try to create. And that goes back to Judge, Jeevan, Chris, myself. You know, we've just done a Bollywood project with a local English producer, me and Jeevan, and that was with some Bollywood artists as well. Zanjeer, it's like traditional rags, what you like, the Indian style of classical music, but we've done it all in English, but with Asian percussion and an English singer, and all in English.
Oh, nice.
So you know, we really like to do stuff. And the other thing, Judge will tell you a bit more about the Surtal. It's like a massive project which we've been involved with for a long time. Bhangra meets orchestra. So I'm gonna hand over to my little bro, and he can tell you loads about that.
Sorry, can I quickly ask? Was Liz Lane in that project? Yeah, that's how she introduced me to you, and I was like,
That's right, exactly, yes.
Okay, Judge, would you like to talk
Yeah,
about your relationship?
well, unlike the other guys, actually, I came to music quite late, so I didn't pick up an instrument until I was 22. Whilst Dildar, Jeev, and Chris, they were playing from when they were children. No, I picked up. Not so much Chris, but Jeeves and Dildar definitely. They were playing instruments as children, very young. Dildar was a child singer basically when he was very young. But I picked up, although I grew up with lots of music around me, I didn't actually pick up an instrument until I was sort of 22. So bass guitar is what I played with RSVP. And unlike the other guys as well, I mainly play with RSVP. I'm almost a one-band man, actually.
One at a time.
almost a one-band man. So so I play with RSVP. I do play. I play guitar, I play keyboards, and I do a lot of producing music. So separate projects and things like that. I do a lot of music production. And my influences. So yeah, I was. I'm not going to tell you when I was born, but I experienced the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and so I grew up listening to reggae and hip hop and Prince and Bhangra and Bollywood. And all of those things get chucked into for what we do with RSVP. So yeah, we get a bit of everything with RSVP. Dildar mentioned Sultan project, so we do quite a lot of collaborations and doing unusual things. And one thing we're doing with RSVP is that we met a composer, Liz Lane, and we've working on a project we've done for 3 or 4 years now, where we're taking Bhangra music and we're mixing it with brass bands, we're mixing it with orchestras. We've created a project called the Surtal Symphony, which is going to be, isn't quite yet there, but it's going to be a 4-part symphony, which is going to be fully orchestrated with very well-known world-leading brass bands and ourselves. So it's a big project, and we're cracking on with that as well.
Ooh. That's quite a cool project. It's also a big one. Wow, good luck on that. So yeah, you guys mentioned about how your band has also because of your background with music, your relationship, you've also been like influenced by different types of genres as well as fusing them together. So the next question is really, obviously, has your music been ever influenced by the culture or politics in the Bristol music scene, or just in Bristol in other words?
Oh yeah.
Okay, we'll hand over to Chris on that one. Let's start off with Chris.
I mean, I was going to add it in actually in the last question, but I think we've all been influenced by like sound system culture in a big way. In the southwest, in Bristol, definitely, you know, big PAs, sound systems in the streets, St Paul's Carnival, all of that kind of thing is definitely fed into everything, and that whole kind of street vibe for festivals, for Mela, that kind of thing, just that kind of event is definitely a massive influence on us, for sure. He says, sat here in a dub production.
with the sound system, are you talking about as in the Caribbean sound system with reggae and jungle and such like that?
Absolutely.
Okay then.
Naomi,
Yeah,
I grew
yeah.
up predominantly with Caribbean communities. So my first love, and actually the first love is like with the reggae music and stuff as well, you know, and politically as well. It was in the time of the St. Paul's riots, yeah. And a lot of my friends are from the Caribbean communities, and I spent over 20 years working in community work, working a lot with the Black minority ethnic communities, and it's had a big influence on me about the journey of our own family, because we're refugees, you know, because this is the story of my family. We come from India to this country. We are disciples of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. I sing this song for all of we. Anyway, I've got a lot of reggae influences, our friends, the local communities and the pubs and the local sound system. My brother's married to a Caribbean lass as well, you know, mixed race Caribbean lass. We've had a very long association with Black minority ethnic communities and mainstream society, white working class communities as well. So we really are a Bristol fusion vibe, you know, we are a fusion vibe. And yeah, from our band members, Chris and Judge and Jeevan, we've done lots of things with other communities as well, you know, so that's a lot of our kind of political, ethical outlook, I suppose, you know, equalities and everything else. So we're all pretty switched on with those things.
Oh wow, that's like, I knew that there was going to be connection in regards to the Caribbean kind of like generation, especially, well, it's kind of like more widely known as the Windrush generation during the 1948s to the 70s, where pretty much an onslaught of people from the Caribbeans, and I guess, well, mainly the Caribbeans, but also many other countries from the when we had a lot of countries from the British Commonwealth, yes, that's the word, coming in due to the whole.
There was a lot of Indians as well, actually, as well. They came over. They called it Windrush because that was the ships coming from the Caribbean, but actually, there was many ships coming from India as well. So around that same time, they were basically they needed manpower in the UK and England, and people came over to help rebuild the country after the war.
My dad came on a freight from Mumbai in 1948 as a 10-year-old.
Whoa.
So yeah, and Jigg and Dildar and myself, our family, we were part of that timing. It was not Windrush in terms of coming from the Caribbean, but actually coming from India. We were part of the first sort of stage of immigration, just immediately post-war, and people you know, all the people from the Commonwealth countries were coming to England to help rebuild the country, essentially, to come here to work and rebuild the country after a terrible war.
Oh, wow. I've done research on it, but like I haven't actually spoken to families and descendants of people who came from those certain generations, so it's really cool. It's really cool to know about, like, you haven't had the first-hand experience, but like your family's experience on it. It's
interesting because although it wasn't our experience, we grew up with our parents telling us about, you know, being on a freight ship, coming to England in a cargo ship, not a passenger ship, you know, a cargo ship. And they had to go, and a ship takes months to get from India to England. It took them months, 2 or 3 months to get here.
Yeah, my dad was telling us a pail of tea, you know, to go around, a pail of teas to go around on the freight ship.
Oh wow. Oh yeah, so continuing off with the
politics was the political sphere, and the time was like partition in India, the British Raj, India and Pakistan, and my dad was on the wrong side of the family was on the wrong side of the border, so they went from what became Pakistan to India, and in 1 year or so they went down to Mumbai. And then I think it was 16 other families, members from 16 other families, came over on this freight boat. And some of them we still have connections and connections in the community till today, to this day.
That's surreal when you think about it. Just to think that they went on, like, first off, cargo ships. I can't think about that. Not my age, anyway. And the fact that it took multiple months, like, there's a lot of trials and tribulations people in that generation had to go through to bring up this country again after the war. So let me do the next question. This one is in regards to how you've kind of introduced RSVP. So how were you able to introduce your music to the music scene? Was it like a struggle to begin with? Is it still a struggle now to kind of like promote your music? But yeah.
Well, I'll hand over to Dildar with that one, because he's probably got plenty to say about the early days. Because Dildar managed the band when it was very young. The band's been going for 25 years.
Oh,
so
wow.
so we were quite young, actually. And Dildar was actually running the band at that point. So I'm sure Dildar can tell you plenty about it.
Yeah, the difficulties was, Naomi, is that as an Asian band, and we were as an Asian band, is that there was a big scene in London and Birmingham, but in Bristol, we're a very, very small community. We're a very small community, and there was no kind of outlet for us to do anything. But even at a young age, 16, 17, we started a cultural group, a group before RSVP, and just to sort of make a public statement that we're a cultural group and this is our culture, music and dance. And that was a band prior to RSVP. And please excuse me if I say things like this. What it is that mainstream Paki music isn't cool. Even, you know, with all my friends from the Black minority ethnic community, it was a different scene, because although there's a lot of racism, the Black minority ethnic community, particularly the Caribbean communities, had their own sound systems, had their own street culture, and they were a dominant community after Windrush and stuff. Even like in the days that, have you ever heard of the Bamboo Club?
No, I haven't.
Look it up. Mr. Bullymore used to run the thingy, yeah? And the Bamboo Club was the first club for Caribbeans, and it was run by a white guy, where they could actually play their own music, and people from Trowbridge would come as well. And that music scene was bubbling, because what it is, you cannot suppress talent, because in the Caribbean community there was a lot of talent as well. But in comparison with the Asian scene, we were struggling to do anything, in all fairness. And then, do you know Patrick Hart of BCFM?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Out of nowhere, I knew Patrick from a long time ago. We'd started this band, and the first outfit was just 4 of us, and we couldn't even get musicians. So we sequenced the music, and Patrick says, I would like to have a go at doing something. I said, what? He says, actually, having you as a mainstream act, although we're an Asian act singing in Punjabi, we liked our music, and he stuck his neck out. So anyway, we played at Kingswood, and Kingswood has always been a racist neighbourhood. And we played there, and we done very, very, very well. And then our next gig was WOMAD.
WOMAD?
And people then WOMAD
the festival.
Yeah, 1970. So our first gig was like a freestyle, Kingswood. Second one was WOMAD. It was a massive one, and we really actually, people seen how much we could do in terms of our music and entertainment. Going back to what I was saying about talent, you can't block it out, because talent is talent, and it's like ourselves now. We've achieved so many things, done so many things. Even the Asian mainstream scenes in London and Birmingham, they would not take us on. We went to see record labels, but we don't know who you are, what you're about. And yet Bristol had actually taken us to their heart, and actually we're proud of what we did, because we're doing something which is our culture. Bristol is our hometown. We do fuse the music as well. And there's not just myself, the older fellas and the generation of the Bamboo Club. Please remember that. but then there's the Judge's era, and Judge will tell you a little bit about how he's seen the scene as well, from when we just started to do, mainstream gigs. People thinking, what's this Asian band with a white old lady who manages them?
Yeah, well, I think what Dildar said has pretty much covered it. I mean, we started off as a Bhangra band in Bristol, so there's hardly any traditional Bhangra listeners in Bristol. There isn't a large Asian community actually, so the majority of people we played to were Western audiences, English people, and a mixed audience actually as well. So it was unusual, but I think again that what's really great about Bristol is that people are willing to listen. Their mind isn't too closed, and if they like it, they'll listen to it. And we've been very lucky because there are lots of Bhangra bands in the bigger cities, in London and in Manchester and in Birmingham. But around that time, in the early 90s, they were catering to Asian audiences. So there were lots of bands, but they were just playing to Asian audiences. So, but because there isn't really an Asian audience in Bristol, we just play to everybody. We just play to everybody. And I do think that we are really lucky because there's very few places, I think, where, on a Saturday night you could play at, I don't know, the Croft or any club in central Bristol and bring on a Bhangra band after a rock band, after a reggae band, bring on a Bhangra band, and everyone not just think, what the hell's going on? So I think we were very lucky, and it has shaped our music, because even when we play in London and Birmingham in front of Indian and Asian audiences, they're shocked by us. Like, we really, I mean, and to be honest, so our worst gigs, we've been really, the times we've ever been received unwell has been actually in front of Asian audiences, because our music is too different. They're expecting traditional music, and then we arrive and we're throwing together Bhangra, rock, reggae, rap, bit of Eastern European klezmer in it, and they're literally shocked. They can't believe it, because so we are an unusual blend, which does represent Bristol and where we're from.
Oh wow. I guess it must be like a little bit of a mind blown. Obviously you guys are a kind of Indian based band. I was expecting kind of like, I know, Punjabi or Indian music, but then suddenly this fusion, what? But yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story. Exactly. We went to Europe. We had a European promoter, and the promoter said to these guys, he says, well, I'm looking for a international Bhangra band, and we've had what they call now Johnny Kelsey, the Dole Foundation.
Yeah.
And they had Atjanek, and they are like mega giants in the Bhangra industry. And they said we were looking for something very like that. And anyway, we said, well, in all fairness, that's not our true style. Our true style is a fusion style. It's like one generation above that. But I'm sure, we can vouch for you and get you recommendation from people we perform for, that we will do well in your event. So when we done the event, he said that we were one of the best outfits we've had, and the previous two big outfits, they were ginormous. They are big giants of the Bhangra industry, and we were getting nominated for best Bhangra band, and we weren't even really on the Bhangra scene.
Yeah, I think RSVP is unusual, because although we're a Bhangra band, and a lot of people say they're a Bhangra fusion band, but what they mean is that they are a Bhangra band that use Western instruments, but they're still a Bhangra band. I think with RSVP, when we say we're Bhangra fusion, what we're trying to say is Bhangra, the style of Bhangra fused with lots of different styles. It's not just Bhangra played with Western instruments. It's a complete, it is, and that is a reflection of the city that we live in, which is Bristol.
That's
absolutely true. With them instruments as well, with Chris and Jeevan and stuff, the fact that they do so much fusion stuff, and we're quite open to it because of where we live as well. We've been going for a long time, 30 years, and at the same time we've been alongside people and places in the music scene, and the difference is because the markets are different because of language, for example, and the perception of language and the culture. And it's just the way culture is that we wouldn't get the same thing. Like Smith and Mighty and all these other things, because they're on the fringes of mainstream, we're that much further away from mainstream music. Our profile and stuff, we fell between the gaps a little bit, and I think it's only because of some of my kind of personal connections through communities and local authorities and public structures, and I was aware of these things, that I've been able to raise our profile along with my brother, who's pretty good as a marketing person, and business stuff. So we have lagged a little bit behind, in all fairness, but I think we've made up and we've turned things on its head, because what was a disadvantage for us, we're isolated from London and Birmingham. The London people won't give us the time of day, nor the Birmingham people. But our own town, Bristol, despite their lacking of understanding of our markets, because of the people and the characters we are and what we love doing, comes across and they supported us. Yeah, due to my connections and working in the communities, Black minority ethnic communities, equalities, and also because of my involvement with public structures, we've been able to progress through profile, because people have taken to us. We're proud of being Bristol, and we feel like ambassadors to the music scene, although we're from a specific genre, Asian music scene, and not necessarily all English language. We have been taken to the hearts of Bristol, and we get lots of support from the music scene. And in all fairness, life's not all perfect as well. Everybody goes through those challenges. So yeah, it's been good, and we're very proud to be part of the Bristol music scene.
The next question is actually talking about how your thoughts on Bristol is with culture, how diverse you think it is, and does it reflect in the music?
In terms of artists and music, and even our own content, and I think it's a reflection of our environment, because we're not tied extremely tight to one genre, as we've been saying with the experimentation and fusion stuff we do, but it's the fact that people are willing to listen to what we do. So there is a good diversity in the Bristol and with the artists and the scene that we have here in Bristol.
Yeah, I think the thing that's interesting with Bristol, I find, and it's interesting because it's a small city. Actually, it's relatively small, and the communities they're not massive enough to have their own scene. Whilst if you go to Birmingham or London or Manchester, the communities are big enough to have their own scene. So you could play Bhangra all your life in Birmingham and never have to interact with any other genres. But because there's so few musicians and there's a small audience, the thing that Bristol has forced us to do is forced us to fuse our music. I mean, even just finding musicians. When Dildar started, he wanted to play Bhangra, but there wasn't even enough musicians to form a Bhangra band. So Dildar had to go and find. When he started the band, he needed a keyboard player. There wasn't a Bhangra keyboard player, an Indian keyboard player. So he had to find an English person. He had to find an English person, Chris, and then he wanted a bass player. He couldn't find an Indian bass player, so he had to get Reg involved. And I think that's one thing that's forced. The environment has forced fusion upon us, because there literally isn't enough people. There aren't enough volume of musicians to say, oh, I'm going to create a niche Bhangra band and I'm going to do it with loads of people who are from a Bhangra background. No, there just aren't enough musicians. Even now, there are not enough musicians in Bristol to create a niche Bhangra band where everyone is from the same background. There just isn't. So it's forcing people to make bands working with different people who have got lots of different influences, different backgrounds, and then the audiences are not big enough. So you couldn't, as a Bhangra band, if we only played to Indian audiences who want Bhangra, we would do 1 gig a year, because in Bristol there just isn't enough. Maybe 2, Diwali, and Diwali and Baisakhi, those are the 2. We do 2 gigs a year, because the Asian community isn't big enough to make a large gigging band. So this is why, most of the time we're playing to mainstream audiences, because Bristol has only got a certain size. So, the audience is only this big. So you can't have a niche band playing to only this audience. So I do think that when we're talking about diversity, I don't think Bristol is any more diverse than any other city of its size. But I think what it does do, it's forced people to, I don't know, forced maybe is not the right word. It's encouraged people might be better. It's encouraged people to listen to other people's music and to play other people's music, and it's that's where I think the fusion in Bristol is unique. Even in Cardiff is a city which is very similar size to Bristol actually. It's not far away as well. We know the Cardiff scene very well. Dildar was born in Cardiff. They've still got a scene which is very much you're a rock band, you're a rock band, you're a pop band, you know, you're this band, you're that. It just everyone fits into their little packets. But in Bristol that doesn't happen. Well, that happens as well, but there is space for a band to say, I'm not a pop band, I'm not a reggae band, I'm not a Bhangra band. Actually, I'm a fusion band. And there is an audience of people in Bristol which I think are willing to do that because of the makeup of Bristol.
Surtal is one of the examples of that. The Surtal is something people are thinking, oh, I'd be interested to hear something different. And people first of all thought it's off the mark, it's off the screen. But we done it with Liz and it was successful. You know, we've enjoyed entertaining those audiences who never have ever thought of what we could come up with between the two outfits.
I think what was very interesting with Dildar, what he just said then, was that we're doing a project which is Surtal Symphony, which is a Bhangra band and a basically an English brass band. So you put those two audiences together, they're both very niche. Bhangra band audience is very niche. People who listen to brass bands is very niche. So those two audiences by themselves are very niche. But actually what we've done is we've put the two together, we've created something which actually anybody can listen to. It bridges those kind of things. And I think that's what Dildar is saying, is we're lucky that we are in Bristol again, because there is an audience for people who would say, oh right, what, a Bhangra band playing with a brass band? Oh yeah, I'd listen to that. And I think we're really lucky, because I think there's lots of places where people would just think, what? Like, you know, and I do think that's why we're lucky, because I think in a city like Bristol, people are open to listen to it.
Yeah, I was going to, literally all I was just going to say was from a previous interview, it kind of backed up what you're saying, backed up what he was mentioning. He's a music promoter in Bristol, and he was talking about, I also asked the question about how diverse Bristol was, and he mentioned it does depend on the artist versus the listeners. With the artists, there are so many different types of genres, such as your Bhangra band, such as brass, such as folk, such as the underground scene with trip hop, drum and bass, and so much. There's a massive variety, but at the same time, it's also to how diverse the listeners are. And as you mentioned, though, there's very small like crowds who are religiously listen to types of like niche music such as Bhangra again, and all these small kind of things, not mainstream in other words, but like, so it's quite cool to think that in a way that though there isn't a wide diversity in listeners, they do have a wide diversity with I guess with the amount of genres they listen to. They're very open to that, so like so absolutely. It kind of helps back it up.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. We've played in lots of places, isn't it? We've played loads of places and lots of cities and smaller places. Actually, not just Bristol. I think the Southwest generally, not just Bristol. I mean, like we would say Bristol all the time, but actually Bath, and if you go down, you know, your Froomes and your Trowbridges and all of that kind of thing. It's almost this area. I feel that people are more open to listen to different things, and I do think it's because it's not a massive centre. You know, if you were in London and you like ska music, you could go to see a ska band every single day. You could see a ska band every single day of the week. There'll be one. But because we don't have that here, if you're really into music and you like live music, you're going to be forced to listen to lots of different styles because the different styles are being played. You can't just say, you know, I'm really into like this particular type of folk and I'm just going to go to that. There just wouldn't be enough gigs. So I think that people are, I mean, that's one reason. I do think there is another reason, because Bristol is a bit of a melting pot, and you know, these big urban centres to the southwest are, and people are more friendly. They're more open to listening to a different culture, whilst there are barriers in the bigger cities and in smaller places where people, it's too frightening. It's too different. You know, they want to separate themselves from that. Whilst here, I think people are open to it.
That totally makes sense. I'll end the question with your quote. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. It's pretty much the same like the culture, but what are your thoughts about politics in Bristol? Do you think the people are vocal or quiet, and do you think that those views are reflected into the music scene?
Definitely. I've got a good pal. Have you heard of Blackout J.A.?
No.
He's an artist, and he's more reggae, dance hall, and drum and bass as well. Anyway, he's a good friend of mine. And politically speaking, being a part of the Black minority ethnic community, he's been involved right the way back with individuals like Paul Stevenson, the bus boycott, the Bristol bus boycott.
Yep.
That was our era, you know, when we were youngsters. Politics as well. People do use the politics. I am a 1 in 10, you know, all sorts of stuff. Not just Bristol, but bands and music is a forum to actually give those messages. You know, the messages, the joking, and my own song about us being refugees. You know, we come from India to this country. The song I also sing it like a bit of a reggae style, because the influence on my childhood was the Caribbean communities, and it's a story. It's a story of a migrant family.
Yeah, I think people always talk about and make music about what is important to them. You know, what is important to them. So this is why politics and why points of views and everything are represented in music, and that happens all the time and everywhere. But I think that Bristol has got a long history, and this is way before any immigrants came into this country. I think if you go back to way back, and this is my history, which is not very good. This is from me being taught in schools. But essentially, I think Bristol became a merchant city in its own right way back, and they wanted to have the right to control their own destiny. And there were riots about then, hundreds of years ago. And then I think there was the Kingswood miners' riots, which only happened a few hundred years ago again, which was essentially people saying that actually we're not happy with how this is. And then obviously we had the riots in the 80s, and actually right now we're having the riots again about Kill the Bill. So I think that Bristol itself is quite a vocal. It is a vocal city. It is a vocal city where people are not willing to just sit back and not say what's on their mind. And I don't just think that's just the minorities or anything like that. I think that's a historical thing going way back, and I don't know why. Because Bristol's a harbour as well, it's a port city, and that in itself brings lots of different people together, and that creates diversity, and that's not just minorities. You know, this is before then as well. So yeah, I think what Dildar's saying is that it brings lots of moral, and it's a politically active place.
It does make sense. Bristol is known to be, from all the interviews I've asked, everyone's pretty much agreed that Bristol's vocal, in other words, with their views, and it's really rare to see a case where something massive happens and the people of Bristol are quiet about it. In fact, I don't think it does happen. Usually if something big happens, someone's going to speak out about it, whether it's going to be in the form of a protest or just kind of like putting it on social media as well. I can't forget that. So yeah, it's just that those different forms. So I guess it goes with other cities as well, but I'd probably say Bristol is it's rather known for that as well. But yeah,
it is, and rightly so. It's an interesting mix. Why would that be? Have your other people talked about why it would be?
I had one interview. He had experience in the punk rock scene, and he does remember the rave scene, but he was young during that time. So he was talking about how, like, obviously people weren't a fan of the mainstream. They weren't a fan of the police kind of like making all these kind of like making the rock, making punk kind of like a taboo in a sense. I think it's also due to the fact that in the rave scene there were drugs as well. But in other words, it was kind of the sense of people didn't like to be quiet. And we kind of agreed that Bristol's kind of like a rebel child. They don't like to be quiet. But I'd probably say like the reason for why he was talking about how like Bristol was such a vocal city is also due to the youth. People in like usually in the past, when it came to the raves, when it came to like the protest, there was like, I can't remember what date, but he mentioned like there was a protest on the M5, I believe, and he was saying how just like all these young people in a way were kind of protesting as well as raving slash partying, in other words, kind of like going against the status quo. And I think it was just like the case of the youth kind of like showing off to the older generation and the government and the police that though you are in charge, you can't tell us what to do in some sort of way. Not in that sense that like you can't tell us what to do, we're going to break the law and everything, but like in the sense that you really can't control us, we are our own people. And it was really like interesting, it was fascinating just to see just these experiences, because he was mentioning about as in like, for example, with the recent I forgot the bills
Kill the bill, yeah, the kill the bill protest.
I didn't notice, but this is the second time it has happened, as in this specific bill was protested. He went to the interviewee went to a protest in London that was protesting the same bill, and they were using music to like protest. You just see all these young people like partying and raving at the same time, kind of like speaking out about how they're against this bill. And yeah, I think it's just their way of saying, I think it was really just Bristol and I guess London as well, because it was in London, like just young people using this time to have fun, as well as, in other words, they're trying to do two in one go.
Yeah, they're trying to enjoy themselves and they're trying to make a point at the same time, which is what young people like to do. So it's great. Yeah. Okay, good.
Last question is, do you see music and music group like your band expanding in the music scene, if not the whole of UK? Like, what kind of future do you see with your band, with fusion bands like your one? I don't know, people mixing their own country and along with other genres in. So yeah.
Very quickly, I think in terms of our own style, it's very unique in as much as that we're a performance act, and we've even had people describe us, having worked in communities and local government and stuff like that, we're like a community cohesion act. Old, black, pink, green, white, whatever, you know, you can actually have fun together. It could be old people, it could be young people, you can do it together. And people actually proactively book us for that reason, because we're a good act to get people together, you know, do the music, because we're actually, our music and our performance is participative in our style. So, and we've actually taken that further, not just necessarily just to Bristol and the Southwest. We've been abroad as well, and even our style and our musical dynamics in terms of how our music comes across as well. It really is energy. It is energy.
And where do you see the future, Veed? Where do you see the future?
Where do I see the future? I think we'll probably we'll have a few more EDM tracks or remixes, I would have thought, for the younger generation. And they'll put their own spin on things as well. That's what I feel at the moment. Yeah, definitely. As well, for world music becoming available to DJs, for them to be able to add their own flares and stuff that to it as well. But I think that's going to be the future for us as a band. You know, our band members and other people collaborating to do more more collaborative stuff.
Oh.
Yeah, and for me, I think that so where do we see music bands like RSVP expanding the music scene, if not the whole of the UK? I mean, I think that there is definitely expansion. It's an interesting thing about music now because we're in an interesting place where recorded music and people releasing albums and things like that, actually they're it's all becoming electronic, and actually the business of selling music in that way is changing vastly. So I'm not so sure about that. But in terms of live music, and there will, I've touched wood, I hope there will always be an audience for live music. I think that bands like RSVP and fusion bands and bands that are mixing different things, I do think there is a good future for those bands, because I think that people are becoming more and more open to hearing different influences. You can just hear it in the charts. Like if you went back 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and you listen to what people were listening to in the mainstream, and now there's songs with African lyrics in, there's Indian lyrics in them, you know, it's becoming the norm in the mainstream, and what means that more people are becoming familiar with these different types of sounds, these different sounding types of music. So I'm hoping people will be more open to hearing these types of things fused together, and I think that as more people can become familiar with it, and it becomes easier on their ear and not, you know, weird, I think people will get to enjoy it more. So yeah, I think, you know, hopefully the future is optimistic and good.
I hope so too. I feel like also with the what I've definitely it's come out to me, especially with the culture of internet and people interacting with so many different types of music, I feel like with that help, fusion music like your band along with other bands will be, well, definitely online. I'm not sure about the live situations like festivals and gigs, but online, and like people having a chance to find your music, I feel like that's ever expanding, because it's so easy to kind of like access different types of music. Like from today alone, I've listened to music from China, from Korea, from South Africa, just all these different places from a click of a button. So I feel like with the help of the internet will be like a huge help in regards to like bringing out all these niche genres. But yeah.
Yeah, it is very easy to access music. I mean, you know, I'm not sure if we're allowed to say it, but Spotify and, you know, people like that, you can click on whatever you want to. I think the actual problem is, an interesting thing is that there's almost an oversupply of music now. There is more music than you can possibly listen to, and as one of the difficulties that people find is not so much that you as a listener can't access music, but someone making music, very hard to get yourself listened to because there's so much more music around. So I think it is a bit of a double-edged sword in that, yes, you can select. You don't have to click above the button. You can go to any genre you want to in the world. But what it does mean is that for the people who are making the music, there'll be a lot of people who never get heard. And I think that is it's a bit unfortunate actually, because people put a lot of love and care and work into their music, and a lot of it won't get heard. And so it's a double-edged sword. This idea of having access to music is great, but for the people who make music, it's not quite always so great, because, you know, it's very, very hard to get yourself heard.
That is true. It's a very
this is why the live music scene is good, because the live music scene, you know, you can only play 1 gig a night. You know, whilst if you're on Spotify and you're Ed Sheeran, you can play, you know, 1 billion songs a day. It doesn't matter. So this is why the live music scene is keeping it democratic. It's keeping it, you know, like if you want to see someone play live, you have to see that person, which is making it easier and more fair, I think, for people who are making music and playing music.
That's true. Yeah. I guess what was I going to say? Yeah. It helps with Bristol being also known for a lot of music venues, though there is some issues in regards to the venues kind of closing down. But hopefully in the future, the music venues in Bristol will continue to kind of like support all these small bands, because I, like you said, it is a double-edged sword. There's so many songs on the internet at this point, it's oversaturated, and like it's really now a case of luck if like loads of people listen to the music you put your work into. And with live gigs, it's a lot easier to like present your music to like to enough people, in other words, for them to like share. So yeah,
to an audience. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But we are blessed actually in Bristol, I gotta say, that with having promoters, because it might be one thing, there might be an audience and there might be people making music, but actually without the promoters and the venues, there's no way for those people to connect. So and it is very sad, you know, with coronavirus and all of that, you know, is closing these places down. So our little friends, Left Bank, who we play at, they're a great little music venue in Stokes Croft, but they just couldn't survive it. So anyway, hopefully, as things open up, we can pick these things back up.
Fingers crossed. This is a big hurdle that I hope most music venues and artists and just promoters overcome. But yeah, that is the end of my interview. Thank you so much for letting me talk to you about your experience, talk to you about your band, and just kind of like giving me more insight about the music scene in Bristol. But yeah.
Great. Well, it's been our pleasure. It's really nice to see you.